what's your comment on the Supreme Court judgment on Rivers State government?
You know, thank God for education. Thank God for knowledge. People do not understand that there is a difference between law and rule of law. In Nigeria, we keep churning out laws every day. Nigeria is not lacking in laws. We have laws everywhere. More laws than even America, than any of those countries. But what we don't have is rule of law. And it's unfortunate. So when people call court, and they say rule of law, sorry, no. The court does not give you rule of law. The court gives you law. It is only when the law, because the courts give law because decided cases are part of our hierarchy of laws. Decided cases give us the legal principle that come out from a case. That is ratio decidenda. The decision of the court becomes part of the court. The judges are not there to make laws. The judges are there to interpret the laws. So rule of law can only be possible if the judges interpret the laws according to the wordings of the law. So anything that is their decision is law. But it can only be rule of law when the decision accords to the wordings of the law. When the courts use their own discretion to give judgment not in accordance with the wordings of the law, that is still law, because by our law any decision of the court is law. But that's not rule of law, because it will not be capable of performing the functions of law, which is principally to ensure orderliness in the society. For anything to become rule of law is not a system of government. Rule of law is an effective exercise, or a more effective or more better way to exercise authority. So rule of law is the effective implementation, interpretation of the law to ensure that the law performs the function of the law, which is orderliness of the society. So before the law can perform the functions of the law must accord to the basic principles. Basic principles. There are certain basic principles the law must conform to in order to be possible that that law will perform the function of the law. If the law does not conform to those basic principles, the law will not be effective enough to become rule of law. What are these principles? They are as enunciated by Longfuller. They are the 8 desiderata of the principles of law. These principles of law include: 1, the law must be expressed in general terms. In other words, the law must apply to everybody without respect to the person. Everybody must be equal to the law. Everybody must be equal before the law, under the law, without discrimination. 2, the law must be publicly promulgated. There is no in a democracy especially, there's no room for any law to be done secretly. You have heard at times the legislature will do something, you heard that it is smuggled. It is that may be law, but it will not be rule of law, because if the people do not know what the law is, they can't obey it. 3, the law must be prospective. It cannot be retrospective, because you cannot command a man today to do something yesterday. It's impossible. So the law cannot be retroactive. It can only be prospective. 4, the law must be expressed in understandable terms. It must be clear. It must be unambiguous. 5, the law must be consistent with each other. Not coming to section 1 and say something, and coming to section 10 and say a contradictory thing. The Supreme Court must be consistent in their judgments, not giving a judgment in this case, and in another case they are contradicting themselves, because one of the principles of law that can make the law to achieve rule of law is that it must be consistent with each other. The next, the law must not require a conduct that is beyond the capacities of the affected parties. When a law gives or requires a conduct that is impossible to achieve, that law can never conduce to rule of law, because we are human beings, we are limited. Then the law must be administered in accordance with the wordings of the law. I hope I've mentioned about 8 of them. The question now is, in all honesty, would you say that the Supreme Court judgments have been consistent with each other? My respectful answer is, I don't think so. The Supreme Court that said that the Plateau State House of Assembly is properly constituted by 6 members, because the remaining of the other members have defected. It's still the same Supreme Court I'm hearing saying that it is an absurdity that the governor presented a budget before a four-man House of Assembly, when it was obvious that the other 27 have defected. The law is there by the Supreme Court. And if law are not consistent, they said it will be difficult for that law to perform the functions of law, which is bringing orderliness in the society. The other principle, the last one, which is the eighth one, is that the law should not be changed so regularly to make the subject not to be able to rely on them. You know, you have a law today. Tomorrow you say you have another law. Next tomorrow you say you have another law. That means when I sit down to plan what I will do tomorrow, I won't know what the position of the law is. So one of the eight, which is the final one, is that the law should be constant. The law should be constant, at least over a long time. So they even said that Wike at a certain point had 6 members of the House of Assembly. I'm not aware any court of law said it was an absurdity. You have to apply the law equally to everybody. You don't have to be changing the law every day. The law will not contradict each other. The law must be clear and unambiguous so that rule of law can prevail. So the reason we have too many laws in Nigeria and we are not orderly in Nigeria is because we don't have rule of law. And that confusion permeates all the arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. So my reaction to the Supreme Court judgment is, first of all, the position of the law is that the Supreme Court judgment is final and should be obeyed by every person and authority in Nigeria. That is the law. So I am not in anywhere in this interview advocating that the Supreme Court judgment should not be obeyed. No. But we are trained as a lawyer. You can agree or disagree and put your points over respectfully. Now, the summary of the judgment is that the governor ought not to have presented the Appropriation Act to the 4 members, but ought to have presented it to the 27 members. Then, that's the election conducted by this Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission. The local government election is invalid. This is the ratio from what I gathered. So, what it means is that the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission should go and organize another election. That's just what it means.